On today's episode, I'll discuss whether Connor Bedard will sign a bridge deal or a long-term deal on his next contract, and I'll also react to the Athletic's recent Blackhawks fan survey.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can check me out on X at Jack Bushman 2, but make sure to follow my Strictly Blackhawks account. That can be found at Talkin' Hockey. Can also click on a link down in the description to easily go and check out that page, so that way you don't miss out on any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. All right, Blackhawks fans, on today's show, I'll be reacting to the Athletic's recent Blackhawks fan survey, and we'll weigh in, share some of my opinions and answers to some of the questions that they asked y'all. But first, I did want to get into a quick update on the Connor Bedard extension front, because obviously, as of July 1st, earlier this month, Bedard officially became eligible to sign an extension with the Blackhawks. However, for many different reasons, from both Bedard's camp and the Blackhawks side of things, I don't really see a rush to get a deal done here this summer. For Bedard, we know it's going to be such a crucial season for him, right? His third year in the NHL, a little bit more established, a little bit more mature. We know there's going to be some more young guns up on the scene. He's also been putting in lots of work on the ice here this offseason. Real good chance, in my opinion, that Bedard puts together his best NHL campaign in 25-26. And then, like I said, from the Blackhawks side of things as well, they're obviously very loaded financially in terms of cap space in the future, but this is definitely a contract they want to get right 100%, because while, again, they have a lot of room, this contract for Bedard is still going to shape and really mold kind of how they're going to go about everything else moving forward. And then they're also still kind of figuring out precisely what kind of player Connor Bedard is, right? I mean, kid's only 20 years old, and he just turned 20 not all that long ago this summer. So again, for many different reasons, don't really see a rush for either side to go and hammer out a contract here this summer. And we kind of got some confirmation on that from Frank Saravalli on his Bleacher Report podcast recently. When talking about Bedard extension this summer, Saravalli said, quote, "I doubt it. I think from both ends, they want to get this deal right," close quote. So again, just reiterating kind of what we already knew, Blackhawks fans, because, Bedard just has so much ability to continue rising these next few years. I don't really see his agent wanting to hammer anything down right here, right now. But real quick, for any of you Blackhawks fans out there who might be a little worried, anxious, or nervous about Bedard not wanting to sign his next contract here in Chicago, don't be. Despite what some Vancouver Canucks fans might be saying out there on social media, Bedard has been outspoken numerous times about how much he wants to be in Chicago, how much he loves being a Blackhawk. And I really do think, considering the lack of help alongside him these first 2 years and the amount of losing that he's gone through, he's handled the situation really well. And I think he's a mature kid that fully understands the situation that he's in as a former number 1 overall pick. There's a lot of people out there, for whatever reason, believe that Connor Bedard is shocked that the Blackhawks, haven't been contending for a Stanley Cup playoff spot in his first 2 seasons. No, the kid's not dumb. He knows where he got drafted to. I'm sure Kyle Davidson has been pretty open about the situation to him. So yeah, because, the Blackhawks have been losing, it makes it easy for a lot of people to wonder about whether Bedard wants to be here truly. But I fully believe he's invested into the Blackhawks long-term. And again, no reason to believe that he's not going to be signing this next deal with Chicago. No reason whatsoever. So don't feel anxious out there, Blackhawks fans. However, the question for Bedard's next deal, as I alluded to right off the jump, is whether he's going to sign a long-term contract or a bridge deal for his next contract. But I'm guessing his agent, like I just referenced a second ago, will probably want him to sign a bridge, just because there's so much room for him to grow. There's so much runway. There's so much upside. It's just hard to see him getting tied down to anything long-term when the salary cap is going up exponentially and probably will continue to do so past the 2029-2030 season, or however long the salaries have been projected to up to this point in time. Again, like Bedard, there's no reason for him to get signed on to a long-term deal when there's still so much room for growth. I'm sure the Blackhawks, would love to sign him to an 8-year contract, and I would absolutely want him to as well. Maybe, they give him a lucrative deal at 8 years for a high AAV. But again, considering, we still have a lot to figure out about this kid, I don't necessarily see that happening. So I'm going to guess Bedard on his next contract winds up signing a 3 to 4 year deal here with the Blackhawks, just because, again, there's so much more to learn about both he and the team, quite honestly, long-term as well, right? Like, I'd love for him to sign an 8-year deal. I don't really imagine that's the advice that his agent is going to be whispering in his ear when the time comes. So I'm guessing it's going to be a 3 to 4 year bridge deal that'll carry Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks into the next stage of his career and their rebuild. That's my kind of expectation for Bedsy's next deal. But again, don't expect it to wind up happening this summer, Blackhawks fans. There doesn't seem to be a rush or any reasoning to go and get it done in the summer of 2025 for many different reasons. But there are my thoughts on the Connor Bedard extension front, getting a little bit of an update from Frank Saravalli recently. Coming up in just a moment, stick around as I dive into the Athletics' recent Blackhawks fan survey and share some of my thoughts on the questions that were asked. But first, I do want to talk to you all real quick about Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting seemingly forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. And that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever because prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can also save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. And if you're worried about what happens when plans change, well, the Game Time guarantee always has your back with event cancellation protection and much more. So go and download the Game Time app today, create an account, and then use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off on your first purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off with Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time. Briefly, before I get into segment 2, just a reminder to go and hit that like button and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already and regularly enjoy the content that I post here on the channel. Segment 2 on today's show, as I referenced right before the break, the Athletics Blackhawks fan survey dropped a couple of days ago, and I definitely I thought it would be fun to, kind of go through some of the questions that they asked and also go through the results, what the Blackhawks, all you great fans, had to say out there, and then C, if you will, share my take on some of the questions that were asked. So getting into some of the questions here, Blackhawks fans, and shout out to The Athletic, by the way, Mark Lazarus, Scott Powers, obviously two of the best, if not the best, on the Blackhawks beat for putting together all of these questions and garnering up the results from all the responding fans. First question that I wanted to share is, with 1 being the least confident and 5 being the most, how confident are you in Kyle Davidson as a GM? 4 was the top answer, with 38% of the votes being a 4. 3 was the next most popular answer, with 26% of the voters going with a 3. 5 was actually the third most popular answer with a 13.4% vote, and then 2 was the fourth most common result with a 13.3% vote share. So I honestly was a little surprised that 5 got more of a vote than 2 did. I knew Blackhawks fans, are still understanding what's transpiring with this team. You're still seeing the long-term plans, and as frustrating as it is at times, we got to remain patient because we got to wait for these kids to arrive. Finally, more of them are starting to be on the scene. But what is interesting is that last year, 55.2% said 4 and 24.6% said 5. So definitely not as confident are Blackhawks fans in GM KD as they were this time last year. another losing season that transpired, and also just the way that the Blackhawks were doing their losing. Not a whole lot of intrigue up until Sam Rinzel, Artem Levshinov, Oliver Moore, and Ryan Green kind of gave some young spirit to this roster in those final couple of weeks of the season. I'd go with a 4 here as well. I know it's the most common answer, but I am still pretty confident in the job that Kyle Davidson is doing. I will say I don't agree with how he's gone about things these last 2 off seasons. I think there is definitely a world in which he can accomplish the goals that he wants to accomplish and giving the young players all the opportunities in the world, while also still giving Connor Bedard and these young players a little bit more support to actually go and thrive out there on the ice, which he likes his young players to do when they're up on the NHL scene. So I still really do believe in what Kyle Davidson is doing. I really like what he's done through the draft, but it's ultimately going to come down to these next couple of summers in free agency when it matters for real, and it's time for him to truly start putting together a winning roster. But I'm still pretty confident that Kyle Davidson is the man to get that done. So my answer would be a 4 as well. Next question is, again, with 1 being the least confident and 5 being the most, how confident are you in Jeff Blashill as the Blackhawks' new head coach? 3 was the most common answer, split right down the middle with 54.2% of the vote. 4 was next up with 21.7% of the vote. And then 2 was the third most common answer, getting 16% of the vote. No real surprise here that a wide majority of Blackhawks fans don't have like too strong of an opinion one way or the other on Jeff Blashill, because he obviously hasn't even coached a single practice for this team yet. Wouldn't have been my ideal hire this summer, but I do, again, understand why Kyle Davidson went that route. I will say, I'm not going to put like a ton of stock into what I've seen from Tampa Bay Lightning fans on social media. I forget who it was as well, man. It was Mikhail Sergachev, I actually believe, just came out with a comment about not necessarily loving what Jeff Blashill did as an assistant coach for Tampa after the team had just won back-to-back Stanley Cups. I am a little bit sketched out. I would go with a 3, though, as well, just because, again, I think it would be unfair to too heavily judge Jeff Blashill before actually seeing the work that he does behind the Blackhawks bench. So my answer would be a 3 as well. Not real surprised to see that result. The next question is, with 1 being the least confident and 5 being the most, how confident are you in where the Blackhawks rebuild is at? Which honestly, I think is a pretty similar question to how confident are you in Kyle Davidson as a general manager. That's why I wasn't surprised to see 4 again being the top result, getting 32.4% of the vote. 3 was next, getting 30.7% of the vote. And then 2 was the third most popular result, getting 19.3% of the vote. Worth pointing out, just like the confidence meter in GM Kyle Davidson, the 4s and 3s and 5s that the Blackhawks rebuild got this time around is a little bit lower than what it was last summer, but I'm not really surprised by that. But largely, people are still understanding where the Blackhawks are at and still confident, I should say, not hopeful, confident that the Blackhawks are going down the right path. And honestly, when seeing what those young kids did, albeit in a small sample size last year, I don't know how you can't not be. And knowing there's going to be more and more help coming in all the cap space they have, right? Obviously, they got to make the most on that cap space and got a hit with their free agent ads. But I really do believe the Blackhawks, as frustrating as it's been during this 8-year playoff drought, I really do believe they're in a good spot moving forward. So my answer, again, would be a 4, just like it was for my confidence in KD as the general manager. Next question is, with 1 being the least confident, or actually this isn't 1 with that as the start of the sentence. It's just, how would you grade the Blackhawks offseason? A, B, C, D, or F? Most common answer was C, getting 39% of the vote. B was next up, getting 24.3% of the vote. D was third, getting 23.5% of the vote. And then the 4th most popular answer was F, getting 9.9%. I totally get this reaction by Blackhawks fans, because I do think, while we didn't expect this to be a crazy offseason for the Blackhawks, I don't really think they were ever truly going to be in the running for Mitch Marner. I do think, again, like I kind of talked about in terms of the offseason moves that Kyle Davidson has made these last 2 years, I still think there was room for another legitimate top 6 ad that they could have gotten. And to hear, you know, in offseason rumors that the Blackhawks are trying to go get a top 6 player, it's like at some point, beggars can't be choosers here, right? We want help, but we don't want to give out a long-term contract to a guy who's 27 years old, and we don't want to pay Mitch Marner top tier money. Like, you got to spend and you got to give in order to get. So that would kind of be my reasoning behind 2 consecutive unideal off seasons, in my opinion. I think we saw that transpire under Luke Richardson when he was fired, and just altogether throughout the 24-25 campaign. I didn't expect the Blackhawks to be good, but I didn't expect them to be that bad. And it was really painful to watch them at times. And for the biggest real offseason addition that they got to be Andre Burakovsky, right? Like, to me, I get the patience. I get wanting to give kids the opportunity, but at the end of the day, in my opinion, that's just not good enough. So my answer, again, I know it would be the most popular one. I'm really not trying to just go along with the stereotypical answer here, but my response would have been a C for the Blackhawks offseason here as well. I do like the Ryan Donato contract, but to not really have done much more other than that is just a little questionable in my opinion. All right, Blackhawks fans, going to take a quick break here, but stay with me for segment 3 as I'll go over some more questions about the Blackhawks broadcast team and expectations for Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks this season. First, just wanted to say thank you all for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen, here to start off your day. For your second listen, go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where there is no offseason, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Check out Locked On NHL now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, handful more of questions to dive into here before I wrap up today's show and let you all go and enjoy the rest of your weekends. Next question is, how satisfied are you with Kyle Davidson's decision to largely sit out free agency and count on improvement from within? And honestly, I do think this kind of ties together to the last question, but what was interesting to me, and the reason why I wanted to bring this up on the show, is that all 5 answers, honestly, had at least 15% of the vote. 4 was the most common answer, getting 26.6% of the vote, which was interesting to me, considering C was the most popular answer to grade the offseason. I don't really understand how most of the Blackhawks fans understand sitting out on free agency and largely expecting on improvement from within. But hey, that's the way you all voted for it. 3 was the second most popular answer, though, getting 20.1% of the vote, while 2 was the next popular answer, getting 18.6% of the vote. For me, it would have been a 3 or a 2. It probably would have been a 2 for me, quite honestly, just because it happened for the second consecutive offseason. And it wasn't the most intriguing free agent market of all time, but the Blackhawks could have accomplished what I think they want to accomplish still here in the summer, and that is get more help in their top 9, probably on the wing, right? Like, I think they could have accomplished that in the free agent market if they weren't being so nitpicky. Now, again, I'm not involved in those discussions. I'm not in those meetings. It's easy to judge from afar, but I really do believe the Blackhawks could have and should have done more. So my answer would have been a 2 here, Blackhawks fans. How much did the last few weeks of the season boost your confidence and patience with the rebuild? A little was the most popular response, getting 50% of the vote, while not at all was the second most popular answer, getting 23% of the vote. For me personally, and quite honestly, I feel like so many Blackhawks fans, I don't want to say so many Blackhawks fans because that would be doing all of y'all a disservice. One of the best, if not the best fan base in the NHL. I don't know what other team would have this amount of consistent support and a high number of an attendance, considering they're in the middle of an 8-year postseason drought. So I don't want to sell y'all short there, but I feel like a lot of people were probably tuned out at that point of the year is what I'm kind of trying to say here. So I don't really know how much, stoked people are going to be about, 5 or 6 good games. But at the same point in time, the kids did look excellent. And that's the point, and that's going to continue being the point throughout the entirety of the 25-26 campaign. I'd probably say a little, just because we got to see Sam Rinzel look like an absolute monster. And, if you've been tuning into the latest episodes, you obviously are aware of where he came at in my recent Blackhawks prospect rankings. I'd still have Sam Rinzel rated very highly, but had he have not performed so well in that 9-game stint at the end of the season, who knows if he would have wound up where he wound up. So I am admittedly going to go with a little, while I'm also not surprised that not at all was the second most popular result here. Next question is, what is a realistic points expectation for the Blackhawks this season? 61-70 garnered 54% of the vote. 71 through 80 said 32.5% of y'all, though, said 71 through 80 points, and then fewer than 60 was the third most popular answer, getting 11.2%. Shoot. Last year, I think the Blackhawks projected point totals on FanDuel was 73.5 going into the start of the season. And I did say under, Blackhawks fans, but I did think they were going to finish with 70 or 71 was my projection. They obviously fell short of that. Once again, did not reach the 70-point plateau. Oh, it's such a young and experienced team, but at the same point in time, their ignorance and the ability to skate and their hardworking nature from most of these young kids, like, this is a real tough one for me. Because I really believe they're going to be somewhere in that same ballpark where I expected them last year, like between 70 and 75 points. Shoot, I'll be optimistic. I'll go with 71 through 80 points for the Blackhawks this year. I'm going to guess 73 on the dot. Next question is, how do you grade the Blackhawks TV broadcast team of Rick Ball and Darren Pang? 44.3% of the voters said B, then 31.9% said A, while 18% said C. And honestly, I was surprised to see 18% said C. I really do enjoy this new Blackhawks broadcast now. Obviously, the joke is how many people are actually able to see it, right? But I do think Rick Ball was a much needed replacement of Chris Foster's. That had kind of run his course, and it was worth the experiment, I guess, but it's the Chicago Blackhawks. Chris seems like a really good guy. I interacted with him multiple different times, a hard worker, and I do think he is a talented broadcaster, but hockey, I just don't think is his natural game to call. So it kind of made for some weird interactions and calls at some point in time. Rick Ball knows what he's doing, knows the business, very comfortable up there. And then Darren Pang. Oh my goodness. Darren Pang is such a welcomed addition. I absolutely love Panger. He has been excellent in my opinion, and it's no surprise that he's so well renowned all across the league. I'd give them an A. I really do like this duo. It's not Edzo and Pat Foley in their heyday. I'd probably go with an A- if I were to really critique it down to a specific percentage here, like a 92%. But I think it's also because how poor the Blackhawks broadcast was prior, but I do give Rick Ball and Darren Pang an A of a grade. Last two questions that I wanted to get into here from the Athletics recent Blackhawks fan survey. Once again, shout out to the Athletic for putting this all together. How many goals do you expect Connor Bedard to score in his third NHL season? 21 through 30 was the most popular answer at 51.5%, but 31 through 40 was right behind the second most popular answer, getting 44% of the vote. And this is a very fascinating question because Bedard only 23 goals in 82 games last year after having 22 in 67 during his rookie campaign, I believe. He's going to push. He's going to knock on that door for 30. I don't know if he's quite going to get there because there's still not a ton of firepower alongside him. He's going to pot somewhere between 29 and 31 for the Blackhawks this season, I'm going to guess. And I also do think the Blackhawks power play is going to be a little bit more potent than it's been since Bedard's been up in the NHL. You know what? I'm going to go with 31 goals out of Connor Bedard here in his third NHL campaign. And then the last question, aside from Connor Bedard, and this is actually one I want you all to hit me with down in the comment section below in terms of your answer. Aside from Connor Bedard, whose Blackhawks jersey would you purchase next? Frank Nazar, to me, no surprise, was the most popular answer, getting 50% of the vote. Then Alex Vlasic was next up. A little surprising to me, getting 13% of the vote. Sam Rinzel, interestingly, is third. I would have guessed he would have been the one in second. 10% of the vote. Spencer Knight, fourth, getting 5% of the vote. And then Artem Levshinov, fifth, getting 3% of the vote. To me, it's Frank Nazar and Sam Rinzel. And I honestly don't have either jersey at this point, and I'm not really sure who I'm going to go with next. Honestly, I am sure. It's got to be Frank Nazar because he was number one in my prospect pool first. I've been on the Frank Nazar train. I'm the one who dubbed him Frank the Tank. If you know, you know. Since they drafted him 13th overall in 2022, I knew he was going to be a stud. And there was some random bar in Chicago that has a chalkboard in its pisser. And when I may have had a couple of too many beverages one certain night downtown, I wrote Frank Nazar 2027. Was it? I think I wrote 2026 Calder on this chalkboard. I don't believe will he technically be a rookie next year? I don't know. I'm going to have to go and check out the FanDuel Sportsbook odds, and I'll definitely be running through those on the show here sometime soon to see if he's up for Rookie of the Year this season, because he did play a decent chunk in the NHL last year. But to me, I'm going with Frank Nazar as my next jersey, but very interested to hear what all of you Blackhawks fans have to say down below in the comments section on that front. But that's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Follow Locked On Blackhawks for free, and that way you won't miss out on any of the latest episodes. Until the next one, enjoy your weekends, Blackhawks fans. I'll see you next time. That's embarrassing. Wrong button. Wrong button. That's when you know it's time to get out of here. Hat down. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.